Welcome to Jubilee for the Earth, a podcast about biodiversity and our sacred story. My name is Wesley Cocazello, and I'm a member of the Justice, Peace, and Ecology team for the Missionary Society of St. Columban. The Columbans are a Catholic congregation of priests and lay people who live in solidarity with those who are made poor and marginalized, including the wounded earth. We put this experience into dialogue with Scripture, Catholic social teaching, and science, and this has compelled us to find ways to restore our relationships with God's creation. We believe that ethical behavior must no longer be confined to our relationship with God and other human beings, but must also include all of creation too. In his encyclical letter on the environment, called Laudato Si', Pope Francis writes, "The notion of the common good also extends to future generations. The global economic crises have made painfully obvious the detrimental effects of disregarding our common destiny, which cannot exclude those who come after us. We can no longer speak of sustainable development apart from intergenerational solidarity." Across the world, young people are raising their voices to make it clear that caring for our common home is a major concern for them. Given scientific reports and planetary trends, they're being frank about their anxieties for the future. What will the world look like in the coming decades? Will it be hospitable enough for them to build thriving lives? Is it responsible for them to bring children into this world? Research into the growing rates of ecological grief make it clear that the destruction of the web of life is having a profound impact on young people's mental health and their overall happiness. Older generations have a responsibility to steward the earth so that it can be passed down to those that come after them. They also have a responsibility to listen to the perspective and the experience of young people, keeping in mind St. Benedict's maxim that it is often to a young person that the Lord reveals what is best. If we want to solve the world's ecological crisis, we have to listen to young people. Decisions have to be made with their input, because it will be their generations who will be responsible for facing the worst consequences of this crisis. Episode 11, Prophets of the Future, Biodiversity Loss and Young People.
Let us go somewhere more close to you, no? In your own particular countries. Is biodiversity loss happening? And if it is happening, can you give us some examples, no? And what are the impacts to young people in particular?
That was Father Kurt Zion Pala. Father Kurt is a Columban priest living and working in the northern state of Kachin in Myanmar. He works with Catholic students in the Kachin Diocese and is the coordinator for the Columban's justice, peace ecology, and interreligious dialogue work in the country. He also helps lead the Myanmar chapter of the Laudato Si' movement. Father Kurt is talking with 3 young people from the Columban network across the world. The first is Mary Lou Vasquez. Mary Lou is from El Paso, Texas in the United States, and is the co-founder of Just Catholics El Paso, a community of young Catholics in El Paso that promotes the study, diffusion, and implementation of Catholic social teaching.
I live in the desert, right? And of course, the natural landscape of the desert is rocks, cacti, desert willows that require very little water. But yet, like within houses, you see that people are using like grass that requires a lot more water. And we also have very big fields of pecan orchards that are very profitable, but they need to be swamp irrigated. So it's a lot more water, it's a profit. So you kind of see that loss of biodiversity because the residential gardens as well as the commercial gardens don't reflect, the natural landscape of El Paso. And I even learned a couple of years ago that, grass is actually an invasive species in the desert. So, us bringing grass into our home gardens, just because it looks pretty, like it's not really part of the landscape. So you start to see how we're bringing in resources or extracting even more from the land in terms of water, at least here in the desert, which is more scarce, for the purpose of profit or personal gain. And so the way that it reflects within, Catholicism and my faith and how I'm looking at it, God told us that we are to be stewards of creation, not owners of creation. So you start to see these patterns in which we are abusing the earth and its dignity for personal gain?
In our country, deforestation is occurring at a high level.
That was Sharmeen Mukhtaran. Sharmeen is a young adult from Pakistan where she studies zoology. She coordinates a youth group that focuses on environmental protection, ecological education, and capacity building for youth involvement in these issues. She's also a member of the Columban's Global Youth Encounter team.
And overgrazing, soil erosion, water lodging, and moreover, all these salinity. And these are the major threats that are making the animals and plants harm, both flora and fauna, and also affecting the agricultural crops and the lands. And after that, what I am saying, the uh, biodiversity loss is affecting the young people in such a way that being a young youth or young people, education is our a very great weapon which can change a smaller thing to a larger one. So what I believe that being a science student or zoology student, we think that the study is very good if we make it practical, like practical things and studies make the things very good. So biodiversity plays a very vital role for me and others also, what I believe, because if I study anything and I don't have its exposure at a very great level or broader sense, then it will not work more effectively as the practical things and exposure and insights makes it. So I think it affects directly to education, like students. And we know that young people are the future of any country or nation. So if we are good in education and with practical things, that it is good. So preservance of biodiversity is as important as to make a nation grow. Thanks.
Are there difficulties or challenges that you encounter as you try to advocate for the protection of environment in the Philippines or wherever you go?
As an indigenous person, I think one huge thing that we still face is discrimination.
That was Sefa Tauli. Sefa is a Filipino indigenous rights activist. She is an Abaloy Katunaya Igarut indigenous youth. Sefa is a policy co-coordinator and a steering committee member of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network, and is also a member of the Columban's Global Youth Encounter team.
There are still many misconceptions that because many indigenous peoples live close to nature, that we're the ones who are causing its destruction. But in fact, the opposite is true, because indigenous peoples actually have a very deep connection with nature, and it allows us to coexist with nature and take care of it, right? But sometimes people have the opposite idea. I think there isn't a deep understanding yet of this, or they're choosing not to see it, or something like that. And so we continue to have challenges in having the right to decide, having the right to be heard, having the right to access justice when injustice happens. So that's one big challenge as an indigenous person. And I think youth also face the same in a way, because our views are also not being taken seriously because we're young, even though these issues are actually very important to us and they affect us directly.
There's two things that have been prominent throughout our efforts. One, the first one is just, at least in my diocese here in El Paso, there's not really a priority in terms of talking about the environment or talking about climate change or ecological justice. Like there's, I don't want to discredit some of the parishes and some of the smaller groups that are trying to do individual efforts, but in terms of diocesan wise, there's not like a pastoral plan for it. It's not really, like integrated within religious education. There's not really like a overall, like I know the Peace and Justice ministry does do that, because I have a friend who's actually going to intern with them to educate, but like overall it just doesn't seem like it's a priority within the Catholic circle. And even more fundamentally, the second challenge in carrying out advocacy and education is just lack of understanding on the topic. And so again, Catholic social teaching and how the environment falls into Catholic social teaching, that's at its essence, it's our faith, right? It's love, is how God said, carry out agape love and carry out, care for our creation because we're all interconnected. Yet we have found that most people are not aware of Catholic social teaching and what it is. So that's why it's called the hidden jewel of Catholicism, because, just in general, like people maybe have heard about it at a surface level or have never even heard about it. And so you find like a disconnect between general media and what people have heard in general media, and sometimes even some extremist narratives, and then what the Catholic Church actually teaches. So we have found that some people are more driven to hearing about what's going on in the world and forming their conscience with a non-Catholic perspective that oftentimes doesn't fit with the fundamentals of Catholicism and how ecological justice and care for creation is taught through Catholicism.
How do you feel about biodiversity loss, no? And what is your faith, if not your faith, your culture and tradition teach you about biodiversity?
Whenever I see biodiversity loss or anything that harm nature and our Mother Earth, my heart feels very sad and my heart aches, like how nature is getting destroyed by human activities and other things. So, and what my faith teaches me, I want to quote a verse from the Holy Bible, from Genesis chapter 122 verse, which says, be fruitful and multiply and fill the skies and seas. From this verse, I get the lesson that the Lord commanded us to take care of the earth and all the animals and plants, all the creation and nature, which is a gift to not only to me but to the entire people in the world. So it's our responsibility to take care of the Mother Earth, to restore it and make it heal. Like in previous lockdown, we can see the changes, enormous changes from which the earth has gone, like the ozone depletion got healed, pollution was on a low ratio because all the transport was just banned and all the human activities were reduced. This resulted in restoring and healing the earth. So I felt good that it has a great benefit that people reduced their activities, which resulted and consequently the earth healed. So from generation to generation, we have the responsibility to take care of the earth and to sustain its her life.
These days, no, we are all calling for actions. As young people, what can we do, or what can you do to stop biodiversity individually, in your communities, or at the different levels of the government and in the global international scene? What are some things, some actions we can do?
This sounds cliche, but get educated, right? So if this is the first time that you hear about Catholic social teaching, or if you've heard about it at a superficial level, I encourage you to look into it, see what are the principles, how you can best understand it, because if you understand Catholic social teaching, you understand the essence of your faith in terms of Catholicism. And there is a lot of resources out there, not only in the USCCB website, but the Catholic Church has a rich tradition of putting out Catholic social teaching resources like letters and encyclicals throughout the years, throughout the century, that address a lot of social issues. And so you get to understand how it is that our faith then applies to societal implications. So then that way you know what the Catholic Church says about society, and then you can discern between what media is saying and what your faith is saying. And I think can help you be a lot more centered. And And then the other thing that I encourage you to do is just in daily living, especially when it comes to biodiversity and understanding how it's changing within your region. I encourage you to go out in nature and understand like the natural landscape of where you live, right? So for example, me here in El Paso, I go to the mountains, I see, again, cacti, I see desert willows. There's even apps that help you identify those plants so you can kind of get a sense of what plants they are, you know, in your region. And then you can look at your house if you have a garden, if you have a backyard, like here in El Paso, you know, again, grass is an invasive species because it needs a lot more water than the landscape can supply. So if you have plants that are not desert plants, right? Like I wouldn't bring a blueberry into my personal garden because blueberries don't naturally grow here and it will need a lot more water and a lot more special conditions. So then mirroring the landscape of your community and bringing that within your home as well to make sure that you're sustaining your home as well in your own gardens.
Would you like to leave us with some words, no, that you want to say to your own fellow young people or to the whole world in general?
To fellow young people, I think what I would just say is to believe in yourself because your voice, it matters. And also to keep learning because like no one has all the answers right now, but we should never stop trying to always understand deeper the issues that are important to us and to always just learn more whenever we can.
Thank you for listening to Jubilee for the Earth, Biodiversity and Our Sacred Story. To learn more about the Missionary Society of St. Columban and also how you can help care for our planet's biodiversity, please visit our website at columbanjpe.org/Jubilee Podcast. This podcast was produced by the Missionary Society of St. Columban. The theme music is from Purple Planet Music. All other credits are listed in the show notes. We hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you have, please consider leaving us a comment or a review. We'd love to hear from you.